I'm Maureen Bellatori, and this is Spilled Salt, a podcast on the thrills and spills from the food, beverage, and agriculture industries. Today's guest is Jolene Brown, and Jolene's been a professional speaker and a champion for the people of agriculture, as she calls it, which is just so true, for 40 years. We met through the National Speakers Association at a conference about a month ago where I was absolutely delighted to meet another person in agriculture and hear more about the work that she's doing. Jolene has been called agriculture's version of Dr. Phil. And I think in today's conversation, you'll see why they call her that. She is doing critical work for the people of agriculture. And one of the things that I respect most about the work that she's doing is creating legacy in the agriculture industry. Enjoy today's conversation. Hello, Jolene. It's so great to see you. How are you?
I'm great, Maureen. I'm tickled to be with you.
Right back at ya. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you. So usually we always start in the beginning, right? Naturally. And so I always like to ask about your history. And so for some people, that's a winding path of how they got to where they are. Yours is, I'm sure you've got your own winding path, but you've been a professional speaker for 40 years. Take us back to the beginning. How did you decide to get into this profession in the first place?
Well, I didn't even know it was a profession when I started, so we'll begin that. But, in the 80s, my husband and I are farmers, and land values crashed, especially in the Midwest. We lost our net income, our net worth down to about 67% of its original. We were paying 20 to 22% interest rate. And so the haunting words that came down our country roads were bankruptcy, foreclosure, suicide, and murder. Matter of fact, the president of our bank was murdered by a farmer, and he was a member of our farm team. So one of our ag organizations decided it was time to bring us some hope because everybody was in despair. And my husband and I drove 3 hours to this event. We're surrounded by 500 other farmers. And oh, what an amazing presentation. And when he got done, I was so excited to shake his hand and to thank him. And that's when the MC said, gosh, he had an early flight. He had to go and catch his plane, so he won't be here. Now, oh, what a bummer. So
he had come to speak to all of these farmers and then jetted out of the room and left?
He was with us for 6 hours. He gave us a great deal and a very long day. But I wanted to thank him and to shake his hand to see if he's human.
Sure, as a farmer does, yep.
So about 2 weeks later, I wrote him a letter and I said, what you do is so very good. And we learned so much. We need what you have to say, but we need more than hope. We need some help. And here's 3 examples for each of your main points. As you work in agriculture, feel free to use them. And then do stay a little bit so that we might thank you and shake your hand and let you know how much you meant to us. Well, about 4 days later, my phone rang. And that masterful celebrity speaker chose to become a student. And he began asking me, what's this all about and how does this work? After an hour into the conversation, he said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to shorten my program. I want you on that stage.
Oh.
I want you to tell them exactly what you just told me. And then you'll need to answer the questions because I have to leave. And I'll have my assistant call you tomorrow with your travel itinerary. You'll be going to Illinois and Indiana. There will be 500 farmers at each event. And he hung up.
Oh my goodness. That is wild.
So 2 weeks later, I was backstage vomiting into a wastebasket.
So
I've
you
never spoken to a group in my life. I wasn't in 4-H or FFA. That wasn't an option for me. And here I am. And as I went out into the stage, I decided, you better give them the best of what you got. God wants you to be here. Use your spine, use your mind, and use your voice. And that's how I started. It all began with that. And then, of course, the topics that were very much in need at that time were how do you separate your self-worth from your net worth?
Mm-hmm.
How do you build an internal reserve when the external one is gone? And so I really worked very hard to, again, more than hope, to bring them hope and help and inspiration and joy and appreciation for who they are, the rough journey that they're on, and where we can go together to support each other. And of course, that morphed through different topics. So I work in advocacy. I work in helping that our farmers, growers, and ranchers make sure they know why they're in business and how to stay in business with what they're trying to sell. But the bulk of what I do is really in family business. Because, Maureen, I learned we in agriculture are superior at weeds, seeds, breeds, feeds, money, machinery, and marketing, but we're crappy with people.
Mm.
And yet it's the
Isn't
people
that
that do all the production. So I chose to specialize in the human side of agriculture, especially our family businesses.
I would imagine that specializing in that area of work, because it's such a delicate business, it can be, right? Although, in my research leading up to this episode, one of the things that I loved about reading through your website is, which I is you mentioned, she calls them as she sees them, which was an observation that I had about you too in meeting you at the National Speakers Association event. So tell me a little bit about what that looks like for you when you go into these
Mhm.
sessions. And I say it can be delicate because these farmers are often avoiding difficult conversations, is something that I find in conversations that I have. What are some of the things that you're seeing in those discussions?
Well, when you say say it like it is, when I consult in a family business, I bring 4 tools. I bring a mirror, a box of tissues, a roll of duct tape, and a 2x4. And those are on the table. And I have to bring the mirror because usually they invite me to fix somebody else. If
Mm,
dad would just give up control, if mom would say what's on her mind, if those kids just had a work ethic, well, if he hadn't married her, we'd be okay. Okay. So we got to deal with
mhm,
those at the table. And also, we have to start with where we are at today. I'm not saying what has happened to you in the past is right or fair or even good, but it's what it is.
mhm.
And so how do we begin today to make a good business better or to get over the stumbling blocks that are keeping that from happening? Then I have to have the tissues because of what you just explained.
Yeah.
And that is everyone has emotion,
Mhm.
anger, resentment, fear, worry, tears. And they've all taught me that when emotion and logic collide, emotion wins. So
Mm.
I must deal with the emotion before we can get to the logic of what we're going to do. And then the duct tape. Why do you think I need the duct tape, Maureen?
To shut people up that can't shut themselves up, I would imagine.
That's one. But the real purpose is sometimes I have to tape them to their chair.
Mm.
There's going to be somebody in that family who says, by golly, this is how it's going to be, says his or her piece and wants to walk out the door.
Oh, yeah.
And there's somebody
Mhm.
else at the table that goes, oh, this is getting really hard. I'm going to go get some coffee and cookies. I'll come back in just a
Uh-huh.
little bit. And so we have to deal with that emotion. You must be present. I have 2 rules. Everybody knows the agenda before I show up. I've spent hours working with them individually since I work all across North America and countries beyond. A lot of it was by Zoom or by
Mhm.
phone. And so I know the issues and they've gotten the agenda.
Mhm.
So if I come and we're working through the agenda, if they choose to say nothing, that means they agree with the rest of what we are saying. And if they
Mhm.
choose to leave, they're going to abide by whatever we decide.
Mhm.
And then I have to bring the 2x4 because sometimes there's no other way. You just got to let them have it. We need them. Well, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
So, mom and dad are quite upset because they had sold by contract their farming business to the next generation.
Okay.
She runs a travel agency. He's on boards. The next generation is running the business. They sold by contract and the kids aren't paying them.
Mm.
The first thing I said, was this a legal contract? They said yes. I said, well, then you have to take them to court. Oh, but there are kids. Well, then it's a gift. No, we need the
Mm.
money. I don't have any other way.
Mhm.
And when I asked the next generation, why aren't you meeting the terms of the contract? This is your signature.
Mhm.
Why aren't you paying your parents? And you know what they said? Well, we're going to get it all anyway. Why should we have to pay for it? That's a 2x4 moment.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that just gave me chills because you're so right. I can
I
just see
let
you
them have
wanting
it.
to
Right?
whack them.
Well,
Yeah.
um, I'm really not telling them things they don't already know.
Absolutely.
But the number one thing that breaks up a family and a business is silence. It's the greatest
Mm.
destroyer. So I had a family, 4 in their 60s, the next generation, and mom owns all of the assets. And they think she has a will, but they're not sure. So they
Mhm.
said, mom's in the assisted living. Would you go talk to mom? I said, does mom want to talk to me? So I got there. And as we're talking, she's just a hoot. I mean, she's so alert. She has some physical disabilities that she can't handle, but she's just extremely sharp. And she said, Jolene, I'm not going to tell my kids what's in my will because right now they all come to see me.
Oh.
The challenge was she told me what's in her will.
Uh-huh.
Now, ethically, I cannot go to the next generation and tell them.
Right.
But I did say to her, do you know that if this is carried out, not only will they have to sell the business, they will
Mm,
never talk to each other again. Is that what you want? Because
mm,
while you're of sound mind, and she was, you can make changes if you choose to. So we had quite a conversation. But silence is filled by hopes and assumptions and expectations, and it's a real problem.
it speaks
And,
volumes.
yeah.
But so you said something really really impactful. You have to deal with the emotion before you can get to the logic.
Mhm.
How do you get them to open up
Well, first of all, I've spent time with each of them individually.
before going
And
into a group session?
oh yeah, sometimes up to 40 to 80 hours. I
Mhm.
have worked
Wow,
with,
okay.
depends how what of a big up, and I've had huge family businesses. Okay. I've also had an only child and a mom and dad. So everything
Mhm.
varies, but um, a lot of it is honoring the control of the business
Mhm.
and the worthiness of the people, including the history that brought them to today.
Mhm.
What I find is a senior generation will not relinquish control until they have two things. They have to be financially secure first, because you can't dink with my security.
Mhm.
You want to buy more land, but what about me? You want to buy
Mhm.
more animals, but what about me? You want to start a farmer's market, but what about me? So we have to make sure they're financially secure first. And the second is they need to feel worthwhile.
Mhm.
Please do not kick a farmer, a rancher, or grower off the land. That is their soul.
Mhm.
But what jobs can they still safely do? And they don't get to decide those, by the way. And at the same time, they have grit. They're the wise masters out there. And I tell them the most important thing you can do is to say, man, that's a good idea. How are you going to mitigate your risk? Or
Mhm.
here's
Right.
somebody I've met along my years of life that might be able to help you. Here's his name
Mhm.
and number,
Mhm.
because we need the wise masters. But there is a triangle as we work through the emotions and the responsibilities. The first is labor. I
Mhm.
want everybody to scoop poop, have junky equipment, work long hours, start at the
Yep.
beginning. I want them to have sacrifice, labor.
Mhm.
When you labor well, then you get to manage. You
Mhm.
might be good at agronomy or accounting or mechanics, whatever you're good at it. Now you manage that. Oh, you did that well. Now you manage this. And then you get to lead. But at the pinnacle of your career,
Mhm.
senior generation, you get to become labor again.
Mhm.
You
Right.
see, if they'll answer my three questions, one of which is, do you want this business to continue? I
Mhm.
need a yes or a no. That's it. I don't want to hear, well, how's it going to happen? We don't know. I just want to know, is it the fire in your belly that you want this to continue? If you tell me yes, then the number one job of the leader is to replace him or herself,
Mhm.
not to be kicked off the land, but to honor the wise grit, the wisdom, the journey that brought them to today.
So intelligent. You're there's a reason you've been doing this for 40 years. Clearly you know your stuff. I can just tell, you've really expertly navigated the way to get everybody at the table, which
Well,
in
yeah,
this
and
industry is
I
not
don't
an easy thing.
mediate, I dictate.
Yeah. Which
Well, but I want them to try everybody else close to home, because if I'm going to work in New Zealand or Ireland or Canada or here, I want them to try everybody close to home.
right.
And then if that doesn't work and now they've heard me along the way, or they watch your podcast or something, they know how I work and why I work, then they send me an email. We arrange a phone time. I don't charge for that first hour. It's a discovery call to know whether or
Yep.
not my work can be of value. But before I will pick up the phone or click on the Zoom link, they have to have answered specific questions individually. You
Mhm.
cannot answer. And if you don't do this, I don't pick up the phone or answer the
Yeah.
link.
Yeah, good for
In other
you.
words, I start the accountability, and never, ever will I call them. All motivation has to be driven by them back
Mhm.
to me.
Mhm.
And I put it right back, because it is their business.
Mhm.
It is
Right.
their journey. It is their legacy. It is their dream, not mine.
Right.
My job is to say, okay, so why aren't you doing it? What's the
Right.
roadblocks?
Yeah, and
Let's
they've
get
got
over
to
them.
be they need to be ready to do the work. Absolutely. Tell me a little bit more about your favorite kind of event to speak at or thing to facilitate, whether it's a session like this or one of your other workshops.
Well, in my audiences, they vary from the upstarts to the old farts and everything in between. Okay. So what do I love? Every single generation, every single journey, beginning, middle step, entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
joining an existing business, expanding, coming with a new business plan. I celebrate every, but if you want to ask my favorite, You give me the women of agriculture.
Mm.
We will laugh. We will laugh till we cry. And I tell them, you better go to the bathroom before we start. And get the food out of your mouth because it'll come out of openings it should not. Oh my gosh. The women do a great deal behind the scenes, and I got to get them out of the middle. Everybody dumps, they're the problem solvers and they're the peacemakers, and they want to get together at the holiday table and be happy. So they put themselves in the middle. I say, stop it. I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it, but you've got to do it, and you've got to be consistent in doing it. And it is such a hoot. And then I love when I get to have the young and beginning people in agriculture, and they have such wonderful ideas. They don't have the capital, but I have to remind them, just because you don't own anything doesn't mean you're powerless.
Right.
And sometimes, depending on the length of time they give me, whether it's a keynote or a workshop or full day, we'll role play. Okay, you be dad and I'll be you, because you know exactly what your father's going to say. And then I'm going to pretend how you get into this conversation and when it is you actually walk away. So, we do everything. And then for the senior generation, to help them understand that if they choose this business to continue, then there's work that must be done, both legally and financially. Because I take them, one of my talks is, if we huff and we puff, we blow this house down. And that's because the three little pigs, the third one did it right. One thing at a time. And then the mortar is your attorney, your accountant, and your financial planner, and your family business person. These are the people that will make sure that your intent is real. Because I got to tell you something, Maureen. People in agriculture lie. You know what the lies are? Work hard. Someday this will all be yours. Or I'm going to retire.
Yeah.
And then there's the dreaded, you don't have to worry about your brothers and sisters. They've got their jobs. They're not interested in the business. By the time they are done with my workshop, they clearly understand that a conversation is not a contract. And if it's not in writing, it does not exist. And with family, more, not less, must be in writing. The consultation that I had this morning, I said, the way you did business worked fine when it was just the two of you and your wife. But all of a sudden, you've got a son-in-law and you've got a stepson involved. You have 3 daughters, and they want to know what your plans are.
Right.
What are they? And I did not let him off the hook. And I said, so here's the deal. After we had our conversation, I said, tell me the name of your attorney. Look up his phone number. While we're on this call, would you just go get your phone and call him right now and set up your appointment?
I just love the firm hand that you take in your work.
If you wrap it with their best interest in mind, with the heart that how much you appreciate them, if you wrap it in humor and real life stories so they know they're not alone, we do more than being overwhelmed. We do what's the first thing, the next thing. So he has 4 specific things to do this afternoon, and I'm expecting him to call me Tuesday morning.
That's important work. And I love too that you are very bravely holding them to account, right? Of what they say they're going to do and what they want to do. And you're asking the hard questions of, well, if that's what you want, why aren't you doing it?
Well,
Tell me more.
Yeah,
Go ahead. You go.
The number one thing I hear is, you've been sleeping under my bed. I told him it was highly entertaining. And then I say, so what keeps you up at night? And then I can even get the most stubborn, and I've had them, stubborn farmer, rancher, or grower to, if I ignore some of the language that's used, to reveal the point of pain.
Right. That's why I say it all. That's why you're so right in the emotion component. Because that's key for what's at the heart of what keeps most people up at night.
Well, and if I remind them, I have never read any document that says you must treat all of your children economically equitable. And I've never read anything that says that you can't take care of yourself first.
Right.
So I'm giving them permission to take off some of this burden of uncertainty, and we don't know where to start, and how do you find good advisors, and what's it going to cost? I mean, I got to deal with all this before we can get them to do what they choose to do. Remember, it's their business. It's their action.
Right.
It's me holding up that mirror to reality. Are you going to do it or not? If they've told me, everyone says we have to have a buy-sell agreement within this business. Who's going to buy us out? And is it bloodline only? How will the assets be appraised? There's about 8 parts to a good buy-sell. And if everybody says we've got to get a buy-sell for this S corp, if everyone says yes, I will have called their attorney and asking him to show up at the kitchen table at 3:00 that day. So when I arrive that morning, I say, your attorney's coming at 3:00 today. He's charging you $500 an hour. It's in our best interest to get all the details hammered out before he shows up. Let's go.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen until I have set the tone. I've earned the right for credibility, but always I'm on their team.
Right.
I'm there for their needs, not mine.
Right. And the only reason that they'll open up to you is because they must know that, right? In their heart.
Well,
So
you have to earn that.
I want to move. Yes, you're right. You do have to earn that. I want you to tell me a little bit more about what you think today's farmer needs to know.
Oofda. Oofda. Okay. When I open the eyes to the realities of agriculture, I have to remind them that there's 4 things influencing the decisions they are making, but everybody else too. And that is the pace has changed. The people have changed, the process of how we do it, and the products have changed, but have we? Because today's consumer, and I also, we're buying 5 specific things, and it's not grains or fruits or vegetables or proteins. You know what it is? They're buying time. Everybody wants more time. So whatever, I raise corn and soybeans on our farm. Although I will tell you, I've learned I raise BBSRMs, biologically based specific raw materials, not corn and soybeans. I have to always look it through there. But everybody wants more time. Second thing they want is youth. Nobody wants to get old. But here's the fun part, Maureen. Selling youth has nothing to do with your age. But everything for the fire in your belly for what it is you do. Time, youth, health. Nobody wants to get sick. How do you reduce their stress? How does what you create or provide create safety? So my soybeans are used in dashboards of our cars. And I know that I make disposable diapers with my corn. There's 600 uses for a kernel of corn. Let me repeat that. There's thousands of uses for a kernel of corn. But I have to know what I do is in their value, not mine. So that their time and youth and health, safety, and they want an experience, a touch point. Every interaction you have, everything that you do. But here's a reality check. When I was working in the ranchers in the Northwest, I got to tell you, the government has waged a war on them. And it is tough. It is tough. I sat with 465 ranchers. Most of them had their hats on and there were tears coming down their cheeks. And it had to do with BLM, which to them is Bureau of Land Management, and easements. This is in the Northwest.
Okay.
And I had to say to them, please understand, BLM means Black Lives Matter. To 99.9% of the people you're trying to tell your story to and to support you. And therefore, even though you had this word long before they did, that we have to understand, because the value of what we do is I am the purchaser, not the producer. The value of what we do is in the eye of the consumer and not the creator. And until we can say what we do in terms of what our consumers are buying today, we deserve to be out of business. So what are they buying? Time, youth, health, safety, and an experience. How do you, as a producer, a grower, rancher, how do you sell those things? Because it makes a difference in how you market, how you perceive what you do, how you know that the only reason you're in business is because you're there for their needs and not yours. That's going to help us in agriculture.
I think that is an very helpful insight, and it's true in many industries, right? It's the WIFM. I was recently talking with the Naturally Minnesota team, and they were talking about WIFM, and it's just in so many aspects of brand and marketing and storytelling, that is where it becomes really compelling when the consumer understands what's in it for them. So
but if it's in it for them, it's in it for me.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
keeps me in business, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it becomes part of that full circle.
But also understand, I have learned. Well, I was on a panel, asked to be on a panel because somebody didn't show up. They got fogged in. I'm with PETA, Sierra Club, Greenpeace, HSUS, and me. And they wanted to talk about propositions. So when I was asked to be on the panel, while I was eating my meal that night, so I could hear everybody, I said, I've got to talk to the moderator. He said, okay. I said, got a question for you. Do you know the difference between attacking a person and attacking an issue? He said, yes. So what are we doing tonight? We're talking issues. Great. But you're going to put up a proposition and you're asking for our opinion on your proposition. And I realize that you folks word a proposition that if you vote no, it means yes. So I cannot address propositions, but I can address the issue of the proposition. Is that okay? He said, but here's what I wanted to say. I said to him, I have to sit next to you. My chair will be slightly slanted toward you because I cannot talk to those people, but I can talk to the same people they talk to.
Interesting.
You've got to know when to say, all right. Or when I have a heckler in my group, I might say, well, you might be right. I could have said you might be wrong, but I didn't. And then I go on. It's the same thing when I'm with a group of people who have extreme different opinions on propositions that I do representing agriculture. And by the way, it went very well for us that night and they hated me.
Well, you're probably right. You probably did. However, you have the way that you bring humor to discussions, I would imagine eases a lot of people's minds.
My whole speaking philosophy is if we laugh and relate, only then will we learn and apply.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the laughter is just at me. Sometimes the laughter is, oh no, I did that too. Sometimes it's the laughter with their neighbor. And I got to tell them, if at any time they feel like laughing, please let it out. Because if you don't, it settles back down, spreads out your hips. And some of us haven't been laughing enough. So we have a lot of fun. I am not better than they are. I may have a skill set that they need, but I also need them.
Right.
Everything that I teach has really been taught by all of them to me over these years. And I want to give the best of what I have. My intent when I'm finished is they will know either by the insight shared or the template tools they take home that it will increase their profitability and productivity. And then that will give them some peace of mind because I do want them to sit together happily at a holiday table.
Right.
The only way that we truly love and honor our families if we do the business right. Because if not, we will have fighting on the way to the funeral home.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on this podcast is because when we met at the National Speakers Association event, there was a session that said something along the lines of solving $15 million problems in 15 minutes. And I came and found you after that session and you had the biggest authentic smile on your face and you said, I do that. And it felt like an aha moment in you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Please think about the dollar value, not just of the net worth of the people in agriculture, but the dollar value of good relationships in agriculture, the dollar value of a legacy. What is that? Well, it's easily 15 million, whether it is in land or whether it is in people. And if I can do things that help people do what they do even better, honoring each other, celebrating, pausing to applaud all that they have done, then I think a lot can be done in the 15 minutes. And it's amazing. Sometimes to get to that 15 minutes, you have to go through a lot of crap first, okay?
Right.
But when they get there, you should see the weight come off of the shoulders, the smiles up on the faces. You know, when you have to fire somebody in a family member, but you knew it should have been done a long time ago, it's best for them and best for you, but they didn't use their spine or have the balls to do it. Okay, then we do it. But we do it in a way to say, how can I help you choose what you love to do even better so that you'll show up to work on time, or so that you will be excited about going to work, or so you will be honored for what you do, because it's not going to be here. I think the peace of mind, the sleeping at night, the joy of grandchildren who might have an opportunity to be a part of a legacy, all of that is worth millions and millions of dollars, as well as the assets that can be multi-million dollars.
Right. I love that. Thanks for explaining that. I feel like you have in this already, one of the questions I love to ask is a high point and a low point from your career. And I feel like even just in the stories that you've told thus far have been many high points. But what comes to mind for you when I ask that question about a high point and a low point from your career?
The low points are the suicide calls. They called to tell me
Mm.
goodbye. Somebody from Indiana driving across Illinois, Iowa to kill himself in South Dakota called to tell me goodbye.
Oh my God.
The low points are accepting where they're at and knowing I can't solve all problems, but sometimes the only thing I can do is hold a heart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what has happened is maybe so devastating to them financially or personally or relationship wise, and they didn't cause it, they can't control it, and they have no power to change it. So the only thing left is let's hold your heart, let's count what's left, not what you lost. I write for Successful Farming magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And one month ago, the article came out. I always thought my father's word was good. I just found out it wasn't.
Oof.
I've got to tell you, I received the full spectrum of responses from that. Part of the problem is when you're 600 or 700 words is all you can do.
Right.
You can't go into everything.
Right.
But 10 to 1 were people calling, "You've been sleeping under my bed. I understand what you're saying," because I had to say to this, he wrote me his painful story because he didn't want somebody else to go through the same thing he's going through. And could I please share it? That was
Uh-huh.
the question. So then I explained what he was saying, and here's a better way so we don't have to deal with this. The fact that people know it's happened to others and it's not fair and right, honoring that he was at a stage where we can't count what he's lost, not even what's left. It's, do you have a good faith leader? Do you have some friends? Is your spouse around you?
Mm-hmm.
Are the kids nearby? Can you turn to your neighbors? Because all we can do so he doesn't turn into the numbers of who say that's it and checks out is hold his heart. So the whole article was, after we get done holding your heart, here's the 3 things I'd like you to think about. And that was
Mm-hmm.
it. So that's the low point, right? The high points. Oh, I got so many. First of all, I love what I do. And
I can tell.
I work with the best people on the planet. That is the people of agriculture, the grassroots, growers, farmers, ranchers, their associations, their corporations, and the people, the industries that support us. So it's all the way from biofuels to genetics to everything in between. I get to work with the best people. And the vast majority have really strong values. They also love what they do. And I will tell you, the generations now understand the need to truly treat it as a documented business
Yeah.
with legal and financial, because the risk is very high.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we ride the roller coaster? I don't, I've just got so many stories from New Zealand to Ireland to Mexico, just the people. My heart just swells because of the joy when we begin to acknowledge this is where we're at. This is where you want to be. Let's get there. What can I do? What resources can I give you to help you get to where you need to go? Because I'm not going to hold your hand. This is your business, but I am going to kick you in the butt to keep you going if you need me to.
Right.
But
Right.
you get to decide that, not me.
Right. Yeah. You can tell when someone is deeply passionate about their work, and that just emulates from you. And so kudos to you for being able to find and drive yourself in this work that you're doing to be so aligned with your audience is a gift. We work, at Agency 29 with food, beverage, and agriculture as well. And it's just such a joy to be able to be what I call is on the same side of the table
Mm-hmm.
as the person that you're working with, right? Solving problems in the trenches together is just such a beautiful thing. This is my last question for you. I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about what you think is next for the agriculture industry and or what's next for you.
The agriculture industry is truly morphing to be more business-like in their transactions, in their purpose for marketing, branding, value. What's ahead for agriculture is honoring that there's a huge desire for a lifestyle while they do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so honoring the families or the volunteer activities they want to do, how can that be incorporated into a business And, I have so many companies in agriculture that know how to celebrate the families behind. When somebody in their business does something good, they actually write a handwritten note to the spouse. Isn't that cool?
Oh, yeah, that is cool.
When we sold seed for a particular company, I knew what their birthdays were, when their anniversary was. I knew what grandchildren's activities they wanted to support. I would watch newspapers or online, and I would take snippets and send it to them. Oh, I saw that done. And it really had nothing to do with seed, but it had
Right.
everything to
It's
do with
about
honoring the people
relationships.
who chose to invest and buy the good seed.
Mm-hmm.
And so the relationships are really strong. I'm also seeing, Maureen, that a lot of the younger generation are going peer to peer rather than peer to parent.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yes.
looking for those in their generation who have a similar goal, a common goal. But again, you better treat it as a business from the get-go,
Right.
or you'll lose your peer friend as well as your business.
Right.
And they're learning how to do that, mitigating the risk. Boy, it's to ride the roller coaster right now is truly tough with inputs and everything along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And the devaluation of what agriculture is in the world of America. When you are 1% in the production part of agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you depend on what 99% of the people think and do and want, it's fine to say we got to build a bridge. It's fine to say that. And we work very, very hard at building bridges and making connections and relationships. But more importantly is we understand what they want and need. And then how do I create a business and tell that story
Mm-hmm.
to those who are out there? So there's so many things going on. Communication is always tough. And I'm just like they are. The more I have to communicate with people, the more like cows. Because if I don't like that obedient, I'm going to send her to market. Can't do that with moms or dads or consumers or sisters or brothers. And yet it's the bloodstream of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I always have to remind them, if you're not going to do these things, you better get somebody on your team who's going to do it on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing in our agricultural issues. We all belong to associations that represent what we do. But I'm not the one always lobbying in Washington, D.C.
Right.
I'm not the one responding to something that went viral on the internet that is inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we appreciate those who are doing it on our behalf?
Mm-hmm.
We say, oh, they get a paycheck. They're a lobbyist. We get a paycheck. Well, let me tell you, without what they do, I would not be in business.
Right.
So again, just as we want to be appreciated, everybody up the chain, and the blockchain has certainly come to agriculture. Here's the blockchain means every step from the conception and the seeds all the way through the market and final use. Everything has a step, but people in agriculture are too busy and they're letting other people fill in the block.
Mm.
And that's a problem because other people define what's organic or what's sustainable or what, how about,
Regenerative.
What do I want to say? It's freezing our food costs. It's a big political issue right now. We're not going to have any, what's that called? Let me think. Anyway, the idea here is somebody's gouging us.
Mm.
And so we're going to freeze the price so we won't get gouged.
Mm.
Well, are we not into a market-driven market?
Right.
And if the market needs us, let that demand. So all of these things are coming. Who's speaking on our behalf? If we don't do it ourselves, who does it in our behalf? Then I do so many media interviews. And when I get on site, matter of fact, the minute I get on the plane, it's tricky. Here's fun. I was speaking at the Commodity Classic, and I've been there, 10 more times. So people kind of know what I do and what I'm going to be talking about. So I board my little commuter plane in Moline, Illinois, to get to Chicago, to get down to the Classic. And I get on the plane, and that was the time we had to wear masks on planes.
Mm-hmm.
So a masked man sat next to me, and I said hi, but I left the farm at 3 a.m. I just want to sleep, okay?
Sure.
And so I'm pretending to read on my phone. And all of a sudden, right before the door closes, somebody comes and whispers something into his ear, and they exchange seats.
Okay.
I looked up. He said, "You're Jolene Brown." I said, "I am." He said, "I got to talk to you about my family business. I've had this problem for so long. I just been wanting to call." And he began to say, "Stop. How did you get him to change seats?" And I said, "Oh, no. You told him we were married, didn't you?"
Did he?
I said, "There's at least 10 other people on the plane who know me."
Oh my goodness.
And so all the way to Chicago, we solved his problem. And then he wanted to change his seat so we could do it down to New Orleans. And I said, nope, we're done.
Oh goodness.
It's such a joy. Don't you love what you do, Maureen?
Absolutely. There's nothing like it. It's an incredible industry to work in, and the industry is very lucky to have you and your passion and your expertise as Farmer Brown, and coming from your heart and from your experience is wonderful to have you. So thanks for sharing a couple nuggets with me today. Any parting words that you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Nope. I just want to thank you. The outreach that you do to give us the possibility to learn and to laugh, to be appreciated and to stretch what we know and to get new ideas. It all starts with the seed that somebody plants.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's the nuggets that you pull together with the diversity of people that you choose to interview. Who knows what seed I need? Sometimes we say when the student is ready, the teacher appears, but the teacher has to have content. And so you do that. You give us a great gift. I'm so grateful to have met you. I'm grateful to learn more about you, and I can't wait till we talk again.
Thank you. Me too, Jolene. Thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Spilled Salt. I'm your host, Maureen Valatori. Spilled Salt is an Agency 29 production. Agency 29 is a brand-building firm for food, beverage, and agriculture brands. Learn more at agency29.com. For more information about the podcast, visit spilledsaltpodcast.com. Use that website to send me questions or recommendations for future guests. I always love hearing from you. Spilled Salt is available anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.